Hey guys, so today we're going to add in the phase shift to our transformations of trig graphs, okay, or at least sine and cosine for now. So keep in mind that our amplitude is what's in front of our function, okay, and that's the height, I guess you would say, between the midline and the max, or the midline and the min, okay, or it's halfway between the max and the min. Then we went through B. B allows us to help us know our period. So in other words, where our wave starts to repeat, right, over and over, and that's how long it is there. And then we did K, which was our vertical shift or midline, so how much it went up and down. So today what we're going to focus on is actually now taking that and moving it left or right, doing that phase shift, okay? So let's look at what we have here and begin. So first of all, we're dealing with sine. So let me make my table knowing that I have the sine graph. So with x, we're always dealing with 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And then for sine, we know at 0 it's 0, at pi over 2 it's 1, at pi it's 0, at 3 pi over 2 it's a -1, and at 2 pi it is 0. So that's where we start for sine. The amplitude's what in front, so there's no number there, but what is it? It's 1. The period comes from B. Well, B is what's in front of X. Now, I want you guys to take a look at this right up here. If you look, B is factored out of this X minus H. This will come into play a little bit later, but we don't have to worry about that because the number in front of X is 1. So that means the period is 2 pi over B, which we know in this case is 2 pi over 1. Okay, now I'm going to fill out the vertical shift or the midline first because we've been used to that. And that is our K value. So we're going up 3 because it's a positive thing. Now we're on a phase shift. We're going left or right. But remember, what we do to the inside is kind of like the opposite. So here I see minus pi over 2. So minus, so we're going to the right because it's the opposite. So we're going to the right pi over 2. Okay, so what does that mean for our table now? Well, remember for the y, I like doing the y's first because it's on the outside and we do exactly what we see. So we have 1, the 1 doesn't change anything, and we have the plus 3. So let's add 3 to each of these values. 3, 4, 3, 2, excuse me, and 3. Now, let's work on our x values. Remember, we were dealing with our b before by multiplying by that reciprocal of that b, which we have 1, right? The reciprocal of 1 is 1, so it doesn't change anything. But we do have this moving to the right pi over 2. We have this minus pi over 2. So remember, we're doing the opposite. So we're actually not going to subtract pi over 2 to the x's. We're going to add pi over 2 to the x's. All right, so we get pi over 2. Well, pi over 2 plus pi over 2 is just pi. Pi plus pi over 2 is, think of 1.5, right, which is 3 pi over 2. Okay, pi over 2 plus 3 pi over 2 is 4 pi over 2. 4 pi over 2 is 2 pi. Now, if you guys want to know how fast I'm doing this in my head, is I'm thinking of fractions. So you could always use your extra space to see that adding or subtracting of fractions. And I'll do that right now with this last one, because 2 pi plus pi over 2. Okay, so we have 2 pi plus pi over 2. Well, to add fractions, we need common denominators. So this would be 4 pi over 2. Right, just changing that fraction there. Plus pi over 2. And when we add fractions, once we have a common denominator, we just add the numerator. So 4 pi and pi is 5 pi over 2. So these are my x values that I want to do. Now I know I'm going to the right, so I can keep the y-axis close by. Okay. I also want to make sure that I'm including all these values, but also 0. So be careful. So what I'm going to actually do is start with 0, of course, and do all these values and keep going, because all we're doing is moving it by pi over 2. And these already go pi over 2. So we have 0, we have pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi, 5 pi over 2. Now, of course, we could keep going to the right. So make sure that you have to look ahead of time if it fits or not. Okay, that's why you use pencil too instead of pen. Okay, now I'm going to plot these points. Don't forget, we're moving to the right, so we should see that shift. So at pi over 2, we're at 3. So 1, 2, 3. At pi, we're at 4. At 3 pi over 2, we're at 3. At 2 pi, we're at 2. And at 5 pi over 2, we're at 3. Now, I want you guys to observe, does this still look like our sine graph? Yeah, it does. Remember, the sine starts in the middle, midline, right, and goes up. Now, as you can see, we went up 3, so that's good, that vertical shift. And we went to the right, pi over 2. So this is our phase shift. Okay, let's try another one. Let's see if we can change the period a little bit. So what I want you to notice right now is that this is cosine. So let me set up my table just to get that out of the way. We're still starting with 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Now let's remember our cosine. At 0, cosine is 1. Pi over 2, cosine is 0. At pi, cosine's -1. And 0, then 1. All right, what I want you to notice, guys, is we have our b here, and it is factored out. Okay, so it's in the perfect position. We don't need to worry about anything else at this point. So the amplitude comes out front, so that's 2. Remember, it's absolute value of that. The period is 2 pi over b, which in this case is 2 pi over right here, which is 2, giving us pi. I'm putting it down here, guys, because I know I'm going to be adding and subtracting and stuff to x, so I need more room for my table. The phase shift, remember, it's opposite to what we think, so it's going to go right, pi over 4, and the vertical shift, we're going up 1. I'm going to do my y's first. So remember, y's, because I have the 2 and the 1 here, I'm going to go left to right. So I'm going to multiply by 2 first. I get 2, 0, -2, 0, 2. I'm going to add 1. So I get 3, 0. Oh, sorry, guys. Let me pause this for a second. Sorry, guys, for what came up. All right, where was I? I was adding 1. So that's negative 1, 1. Oh, do you guys see what I did up here? 0 plus 1 is 1. And then 2 plus 1 is 3. All right, that's good. Now let's go on the inside, the x values. So we're dealing with the 2, the b, and the minus pi over 4. When you do the inside, do it left to right again. Okay, so we're going to deal with that 2 first. Remember, we do the opposite. So we're going to multiply by 1/2. Okay, so we get 0. And hopefully you did a bunch of this practice with the sine and cosine the other day. That this comes a little bit easier. 1/2 times pi over 2 is pi over 4. 1/2 times pi is pi over 2. 1/2 times 3 pi over 2 is 3 pi over 4. And 1/2 times 2 pi is pi. And remember, I told you the other day, when you do that multiplication there, your period should end up at the bottom, and that is correct. Okay. Now we got to do one more step and go right pi over 4. So this is minus pi over 4. We're going to do the opposite, which is adding pi over 4. Do you guys see how I'm running out of room at my table? So make sure, if you have a lot of stuff, kind of shift it over. My handwriting's small enough that it will fit. Or I can draw this line, even better. Okay, so adding pi over 4. Pi over 4 to 0 is pi over 4. All right, so I'm going to do some of this math down here so that way you can see. What I'm doing is I'm taking pi over 4 plus pi over 4, which gives me 2 pi over 4. Now, guys, right now, I'm not worried about you guys reducing it. I mean, in the future, you will, especially if you go into an upper math class in trigonometry. So just 2 over 4 is 1/2. So that's why you get the pi over 2. Okay, now we have this pi over 2 plus pi over 4, right? We're adding pi over 4 each time. I need common denominators. So I get 2 pi over 4 plus pi over 4, which gives me 3 pi over 4. Okay, pi over 4 plus 3 pi over 4 is 4 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4 is pi. All right, and this is a full pi and pi over 4. Full pi would be 4 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4 plus pi over 4 is 5 pi over 4. Again, if you have to do that math down below and see the adding and the fractions, do it. Okay, I'm going to the right again, so I'm okay with my y-axis being right there. Now again, it's going to kind of look like the one above, but I'm changing the units. And I'm going to 3, so let's do that here. I kind of wanted to squish for you guys, but don't worry, I'll do that in class. So I'm going to start with 0 and go, it looks like by pi over 4s, right? Okay, so I'm going to say this is pi over 4. This is pi over 2. This is 3 pi over 4. And then we have pi and 5 pi over 4. Okay, we've got at pi over 4, we're at 3. 1, 2, 3. At pi over 2, we're at 1. At 3 pi over 4, we're at -1. And pi, we're at 1. And at 5 pi over 4, we're at 3. Now remember, this is a cosine, so cosine should look like our valley. And it does. And it moved over to the right. It moved up. Sorry, guys, my nose is running. So look at that. That's awesome. All right. Of course, there's one more because we got to check out the factoring, right? So if you guys see here, we have to factor. So we have to look like, if it doesn't have that factored, you have to factor. So let's go negative cosine stays. We're going to factor out that 1/2. The good thing is you know to factor whatever number out, which is in front of x, because we want this to be parentheses x. Okay, now we're going minus, which doesn't work very well because we keep going left, right? Or right. So you know what I'm thinking, guys? Let's change this to addition so we can go to the left and I can show you how that is. So everybody change that. All right, when we factor out a 1/2, it's almost like you're dividing by 1/2, okay? It's not like it is. So 2 divided by 1/2 is what? 2 divided by 1/2 is 4. Oops. Now, here's how you can check your work. If I were to distribute that back in, so I would have 4 pi times 1/2. Do I get 2 pi? Well, 4 pi times 1/2 is 2. So yes, we're good. So that's, always check your factoring. On your practice work, I tried to make it nice. So if you run into something that looks kind of funky, just call me over. Okay, let's look at what sign we have, or what function we have. So 0 pi over 2 pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And we're dealing with cosine. So that means it goes 1, 0, -1, 0, and 1. Okay, amplitude is the absolute value of what's out front. So the absolute value of -1 is 1. But what I'm going to keep in mind is, since it's negative, it means we're going to flip our graph. So we should see that flip. It should no longer be a valley, because it's cosine. It should be a hill. All right, period. 2 pi divided by b, which is 1/2. We practiced this a lot the other day. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So 2 pi times 2 over 1 is 4 pi. Phase shift, we're going to the left because it's adding 4 pi. And vertical shift, we're going down 2. All right, let's do our y's first. We're going to multiply by that -1 first. -1, 0, 1, 0, -1. Now we're going to subtract that 2 because on the outside we do the same. So what is that? -3, -2, -1, -2, -3. Okay, how's my arithmetic? Good? Okay, now when you're dealing with the x's, make sure you look at the factored form, not the original here. Because first we're going to do this b, right? So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. So we get 0 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and 4 pi. Again, if you have to do that multiplication down below, there's plenty of space. All right, here we see adding 4 pi, but what are we going to do to it? We're going to subtract 4 pi. So we got to do the opposite. So Remember to take these values first, and then we're subtracting the 4 pi. So 0 minus 4 pi is a negative 4 pi. Pi minus 4 pi is a negative 3 pi. 2 minus 4 pi is a negative 2 pi. 3 minus 4 pi is a negative pi. And 4 pi minus 4 pi is 0. Now, as you can see, now I'm going to look at these x values, and what do they go by? They go by pi. So I'm going to make sure I'm dividing my units up by pi. Okay. Now, we're moving to the left. So I'm going to, instead of putting my y-axis here, because if my y-axis was here, all my graph would be here. So I'm going to move that y-axis over. I'm going to put it right here. Okay. Sorry guys, my nose is really going today. I'm going to put my x-axis up a little bit higher because, as I can see, all my y values are negative. Okay, so I don't need much space in the positive part. Okay, why don't I make every two of these a pi? So of course that would be pi over here. That's 0, negative pi, negative 2 pi, negative 3 pi, and negative 4 pi. Okay, now at negative 4 pi, I'm at negative 3. 1, 2, 3. At negative 3 pi, I'm at negative 2. At negative 2 pi, I'm at negative 1. Oops, it's right on there. At negative pi, I'm at negative 2. And at 0, I'm at negative 3. So let's look. We got our hill. And we're moved to the left side of the y-axis, and we moved down. Everything matches. All right, guys, check that out. Be careful with the factor. Check if it's factored or not. If you need help, just call me over.